Hello everyone. Let's start with our first class, that is reinforcement concrete. So what is concrete? So basically the concrete is made up of three material, that is cement, fine aggregate or sand, and coarse aggregate. So when we mix all these three with water, we get the concrete, which is a very good material compared to its raw material. So this is the another reason why concrete is also called a composite material. So if you have heard about the term composite material, then you might know the composite material is a material which is made from two or more different materials that when combined, which is stronger than those individual materials by themselves. In composite material, when the materials are combined, the properties of individual material doesn't change. Only all these three material combine and the new material have an enhanced property compared to its raw material, just like in case of concrete. In case of concrete, we have cement, we have sand, and we have coarse aggregate. These materials are pretty much different in their shapes and sizes from each other and also in chemical properties, but when these are mixed together we get the concrete, which is very versatile and one of the most used material in this world today. So if we look into different types of concrete, we have basically two types of concrete. One is PCC, that is plain cement concrete, and other is the reinforced cement concrete. I think you already know that concrete is very strong in compression but very weak in tension. It cannot take the tension. That is why to take care of the requirement of taking tension, we provide reinforcement bars which eventually take the tensile force and the compression force is taken by the concrete itself. Reinforcement is used to enhance the property and also to hold the concrete in case of concrete members. We will discuss the role of reinforcement in later stage. Now let's see what are the different tests that are performed for cement. So for cement we have fineness test to see how fine the cement is, then consistency test, then setting time test. Setting time test is important to see how much time it took for setting. There is two types of setting, one is initial setting time and is final setting time. Picard apparatus is used to test this particular test. Then we have strength test, we have soundness test, we have heat of hydration test, tensile strength test, and chemical composition test. So all these tests are described in different IS codes, basically the IS code 4031 and IS code 4032. I think you have already studied about this test in concrete technology. I would request you all to go through all these tests. So this is a figure of the Vickers apparatus. Now let us go to the different tests which are involved in testing of aggregates. So basically we have two types of aggregate as we have already seen, that is fine aggregate and coarse aggregate. The tests are basically the specific gravity, sieve analysis, fineness modulus for fine aggregate, and for coarse aggregate we have elongation, flakiness index, toughness and strength, abrasion value, etc. These tests are performed to understand the quality of different aggregates which are to be used in concrete. So it is pretty evident that if the constituent materials are up to certain standard, then only we can expect a good quality concrete. If the cement is not of better quality, we cannot expect a good quality concrete. And the same thing also applies to sand and coarse aggregate also. So these tests are very important. We should always perform this test so in order to understand the quality of the material. Also, the taste of water is also important. We should always use potable water, which is also you can say the drinkable water for concrete construction, because if there is impurities in concrete, basically it might be from water, it might be from cement, it might be from aggregate. If impurities are there, it is definitely going to hamper the strength of concrete. Now let us come to the very important topic, that is the characteristic strength. I think while doing mix design you have already heard this term characteristic strength. So for characteristic strength, I think you can associate this particular figure. This is a normal distribution graph where in x-axis you can see the strength values and in y-axis you can see the frequency values. The definition of characteristic strength is: the characteristic strength is defined as the strength of the concrete below which not more than 5% of the test results are expected to fall. That means if you are taking 100 samples for testing and not more than 5 of the samples should fail, uh, or have a strength below the target strength, so then that particular strength is called the characteristic strength. So now you can see in the graph that right side of the graph we have the most of the portion of the graph. Right side of the line, that is over the 30, right side of that line we have most portion of the graph, which is around 95%, and in that case only we can call the 30 as an characteristic strength. This definition holds good for both concrete as well as steel. I would request you all to understand this particular graph because you definitely expect some questions in the gate from this particular graph, because in previous year gate we have seen that many questions have said from this particular graph and giving different values of, say, suppose standard deviation and the difference between the target strength and the characteristic strength. Let's go to the next topic, which is the creep of concrete. So concrete as a material, there are different properties that we need to look into, but very important out of this, a very important topic is the creep on concrete. You can see in the figure that a small portion of the bridge is sagging, and this is nothing but due to creep. Even though you are constructing your structure with utmost care, creep is something that you cannot avoid. Creep is increase in strain due to sustained loading for a very long period of time. The effects of creeps are it increased deflection. Then there might be possibility of buckling. So if suppose you are designing a very slender member and you found that initially it was not buckling, but with time you observe that with the same loading it starts to buckle. This is nothing but maybe because of creep. Then gradual transfer of load from the concrete to reinforcement bar. At the early stage of loading of structure, the all the compression, or you can say most of the compression, is taken by the concrete and most of the tension is taken by the steel. But with time, as the creep affects the concrete, it starts to lose its strength, and more and more amount of load is being transferred to steel. Also, it results in loss of pre-stress in pre-stressed concrete, which is very important and very, very serious matter to be taken under consideration while designing pre-stressed. So if you haven't heard about pre-stressed concrete, this is a concrete where uh, pre-stress, that means already certain amount of stress is incorporated before actual load is being acted upon it. So when already certain amount of stress is there, when creep starts to act on it, then this but already existing stress might change, or there might be losses of this pre-stress. Then what are the causes of creep? So before going to the causes, let me show you this particular graph. This graph is very important. It shows the behavior of creep with time. So here one axis you can see the x direction, you can see the time after loading, and the y direction will be micro strains. So initially, just at the moment of giving the load, you will see the elastic strain. The elastic strain is not an issue for us, as you know that within the elastic region, when a body is strained, then it will regain its original shape when the load is removed from the body. Now you will see that the strain goes on increasing without increasing the load, and at certain point of time it becomes asymptotic. So this particular change in strain is called creep strain. The strain is not because of changing the load, but it is because of the time. But at the last point, if you see that if we remove the load, there will be certain amount of elastic recovery as well as creep recovery, but it is not very much. There will be always certain irreversible creep which will be there in the structure. So what are the different causes? So there are different causes you can list out for creep. So one of it is like content, that is cement content. If it is very high, then there is a higher possibility of creep. If water cement ratio is very high, that means water content is high. If aggregate is low, if air entrainment is high, if air is there inside your concrete, then relative humidity is low and temperature is very high. In all these effects the creep of concrete. Now let's see what is creep coefficient. The creep coefficient is very important when we will be designing our members. So the definition first, the creep coefficient is the creep strain by the initial elastic strain. Just now we have seen the graph where at a certain point of time you can find out what is the creep strain, and if you divide this particular creep strain with instantaneous elastic strain, then we will get creep coefficient. And you can see that with time strain is varying, and the maximum strain divided by this in elastic maximum strain divided by the elastic strain will give you the maximum creep coefficient, which is called ultimate creep coefficient, which is represented by theta. Now what is how it is going to affect your design? Now you know that for design we need to find out the elastic modulus of elasticity. What is modulus of elasticity? Modulus of elasticity is basically the ratio of stress by strain within the elastic region. So within the elastic region, as the stress strain graph is linear, so we get a constant value of elastic modulus of elasticity. But you have seen that it with time there will be changing strain, but there will be no change in stress because loading is not changing, only the strain is changing. So the Young's modulus of elasticity is definitely going to change with time. If we consider everything, the effect of creep as well as stresses and all, we can find out the effective modulus of elasticity, which is represented by ECE, which is equal to EC by 1 plus theta, where EC is the short-term elastic modulus, which can be calculated as 5000 root FCK. This 5000 root FCK is FCK is the characteristic strength, and 5000 F root over FCK is called the elastic modulus of elasticity, which is short-term modulus of elasticity. That means when we are not considering the long-term effect while calculating the EC value. So you can find this particular equation in IS 456-2000, clause number 6.2.3.1. And the previous equation, which is EC is equal to EC by 1 plus theta, this equation you can find out in IS 456-2000, clause C4, which is we will find out in Annexure 4, page number 89. Now, you have seen that to take care or to find out the effective modulus of velocity, we need the ultimate creep coefficient. But the question is how to find out the creep coefficient. So if you have some experimental results, so it is well and good, but if you do not, then you can follow this particular table. This table is available in IS 456 clause 6.2.5.1. The clause says after at the age of 7 days your theta value can be taken as 2.2. At age of 28 days you can take the theta value as 1.6, and after 1 year you can take it as 1.1. You can see the theta value is reducing as the time is increasing, which is also evident from the graph that I have shown you previously, this graph. Here you can see initially the variation of strain is very high, and finally the strain is reducing. Here the slope is very high, but here the slope is low. So with time the ultimate strain is going to reduce. The next topic is shrinkage of concrete. I am not going to cover detail about this. I am just going to show you how shrinkage and creep both are shown in this particular graph. You can see that just after the construction you will encounter the problem of shrinkage, and after that you will be having immediate strain and then creep effect. And the why the shrinkage occurs, the effects, this everything you can easily find out in net as well as in your book. Now another very important topic that we should study, this is the tensile strength of concrete, as also called modulus of rupture. So if you see this particular beam, here you can see a crack just at the soffit or the bottom portion of the beam. It is just two parts of the beam are moving away from each other. That means if tension must have developed there, so have this kind of crack. Now for tension we need to know how much strain is the limit. That means while designing, if you need to understand that if the strain or the stress certain point of the member is found more than this particular stress, there might be possibility of crack. So what is that particular strength you need to find out? That is called tensile strength of concrete. So the equation for this you can find out in the clause number 6.2.2 of IS 456-2000, which is given by FCR is equal to 0.7 root FCK, where FCK is the characteristic strength and FCR will give you the tensile strength of the concrete or the modulus of rupture for that particular grade of concrete. Which is, this equation is very important. We are going to use this particular equation while we will be solving a cracked beams and uncracked beam sections. So let's go to the next slide. So here we are discussing the design approaches. Now let us try to see how to design our concrete members. So there are different design approaches. So these design approaches are working strength design, which is also known as WSM, working stress method, then ultimate strength design or ultimate stress method, and limit state design. So all these three method of design is more or less related to this particular graph. I think this particular graph is familiar to you. It is the stress strain graph, and you can see that OA is the elastic region, and from A to E this is the plastic region. And the working stress method is the first design approach that has been developed by mankind, and within this particular design we assume that our structure is acting within the elastic region of the stress strain graph. We are not considering whatever strength the member has or the material has within its plastic region. So that is why this method is very easy, and it is very much used in last 3 or 4 decades. Now let us see what are the key points of working stress design and its limitations. The first is the linear strain behavior is considered, so it is also called the elastic method of design. So you can see that in this graph the linear stress strain behavior, only this part is used for calculation of or designing of members. So that is why it is called elastic method of design. Then it is a stress based design. That means the strain is not considered while designing, and also working load is used. So what is working load? Working load, if you want to understand, so there are two terms, two things you need to know, that is working load and design load. Working load is also known as service load. So what is working load? This is the load that act on the member during its service period. During calculation of working load, no partial safety factors are considered. But what is design load? So in design load we consider partial safety factors. We increase the working load by certain amount, and then by certain factors, and then we add it and we find the design load. This particular concept is developed after probability based design, so where we consider the probability of occurrence of different kind of load. For example, dead load, which is the self weight or any non-movable item of water structure, which is called dead load, and live load is which is movable like us, these are live load. So in case of dead load, which is these are more reliable, that means most of the time they are going to act over the structure, but live load, which is very much that not that much reliable, because that might come and go. There might be at certain point of time there will be no live load, at certain point of time it will be very high. So the probability of occurrence of load is very important, and that has been taken care of while we are going to find out the design load. But in working load we do not consider this, but working stress method only take care of this working load, and this is only a stress based design. We take care of permissible stress. That means whatever stress or ill stress the material has, we reduce it by certain amount, and that permissible stress we consider for design. Then the concept of modular ratio is used. Here you can see the modular ratio M is equal to ES by EC. It is the ratio of modulus of elasticities, and this concept is used only in working stress method. Then it is a very easy method of design, as everything is linear. No, not need to consider this non-linear effect. So this is a very easy design. Then what are the limitations? The first is concrete is not elastic. Though I am showing you this particular graph, it is not at all linear. It is most of a like non-linear. Okay, a small portion you might get which is linear, but most of the portion of the graph is non-linear. So this linear elastic concept is not justifiable. Then due to the consideration of elastic behavior, we end up with large member sections because we are considering only up to the elastic range. But the member has a remaining strength which we are not exploring, so we end up with a very large member sections. Then probability of occurrence of load is not considered. Probability based design is not done, and long term effect like creep shrinkage etc. are not considered in working stress method. Then let's go to, also there's another one, that concept of modular ratio is not perfect one. I have already told you this is only because stress strain graph is not linear. Then ultimate stress method. After the working stress method, engineers start to think, why not we use the ultimate strength of concrete? We are not considering the strength of the material up to the full extent. So for that reason, uh, engineer starts to explore up the nonlinear part of the stress strain graph of concrete, and this is the first point that we can say for ultimate strength design. The nonlinear stress strain behavior is considered. Then ultimate stress material is considered under the design load. So why design load? Because you can see that ultimate stress is there if the stress cannot increase. So here design load concept is there. Then concept of modular ratio is not used. This is not used, and probability of occurrence of load is considered. Okay, because of design load. Then what are the limitations? So though nonlinear stress strain behavior is considered, during calculation, linear nature of the stress behavior is considered, which is not rational. So that means what? Though we want to use the ultimate strength, but if we want to find out the strains or stresses of the nonlinear part, the calculation or the mathematics is not that easy. It is easy for us if we are doing calculation for linear behavior of stress strain, but nonlinear behavior is very hard to model mathematically. For that reason, though we are using, say, we were saying ultimate strength, but the relationship of stress strain we still consider it to be linear, which is completely non-justifiable. Then when we are considering the ultimate strength, we end up with a very slender members. That is, in our walking stress method we get very hefty, very large sections, but in case of ultimate we got very slender member. So slender member has a problem of serviceability, which is the next option. Serviceability is not considered. That means you are constructing a structure which has members which are very slender, though it can take the load, but you will see that a large number of deflection, a large amount of deflection or large amount of cracks are developed in the structure, which doesn't make the structure safe or doesn't make the structure serviceable. That means from the utility point of view, you are not going to use this particular structure. So it is serviceability is not considered in ultimate stress method. And serviceability effect is also there in working stress, but working stress structures are so large sections that it automatically gets considered. Then finally we end up with the limit state method of design, where we combine both the benefits of working stress and limit state method. Okay, so it's a combination of USM and LSM. Then nonlinear stress strain behavior is considered. Then concept of modular ratio is not used. Probability of occurrence of load is considered. Partial safety factors are considered for both material and load. Two limit sets are considered: limit set of collapse and limit set of service. Basically, the name of limit set comes from this point. That is, basically what we are doing performance based design. That means we are looking at the performance of the structure. Why you are going to construct this particular structure, what is the performance, and how the build, what is the requirement of this particular building. So if there are two limitations that we need to consider here. That is, one is limit set of collapse, that means the structure should not collapse, and the second is limit set of serviceability, that means it should be serviceable. It should be you should be feel safe while you are under this particular structure or using this particular structure. The only limitation is that though nonlinear stress and behavior is considered during calculation, linear nature of the stress and behavior is considered, which is not rational. Okay, and actually this particular effect is also being taken care of by not considering the modular ratio, and you will see that this also being taken care of partially in limit state method of design. Then probabilistic method of design, I have already discussed about this. I have already told you that dead load is more reliable, and it has, you can expect dead load to be always there over the structure, but live load is not reliable. It sometimes it might be very less and it may be very high. So this, from the probabilistic method of design, we get probability of occurrence of load. There is also probability of occurrence, probability of the strength of the concrete, because concrete is not going to behave exactly uh, like you expected it to be, because it's a mixture of three things: cement, sand, and aggregate, and there is very much uncertainty between the metal properties and the how it is, after combining, how it is going to behave. Though you are making a particular grade of concrete, suppose M30, there is a possibility of 5% that the strength is going to be less than this characteristic strength. So considering all these things, we have partial safety factors, PSF, and here in the table below you can see, which is table number 18 of IS 456 in page number 68, it gives you the partial safety factors for load. So you can see dead load plus live load, it is 1.5 and 1, and you can see two columns, basically the limit state of collapse and limit state of serviceability. Here dead load plus live load, then it is 1.5 and 1, dead load plus mean load 1.5, 1.5.9, etc. So I will discuss these particular combinations in the next slide, but first of all, let's see these notes. While considering the earthquake effect, substitute EL with WL. That means, and the next thing, for limit set of serviceability, the value of gamma F given in the table are applied for the short-term effect, while assuming the long-term effect due to grave, that load and other part of the livelihood likely to be permanent may only be considered. This value is to be considered. Okay, fine. So you can see that these two particular nodes are very important. The first node says that if there is wind load, you replace this wind load by earthquake. If there is earthquake load, you replace this wind load with earthquake load. That means you do not have to consider both at the same time. Why that is so? So let's see in the next slide, that is load combination for collapse. The idea behind is that we have dead load in a structure. When you're going to design, we are going to think what are the different load that is going to come and for which we are going to design. So there are basically different types of load, that is dead load, live load, wind load, slow load, rain load, different kind of load will be there. But from our perspective, suppose from the viewpoint of Assam, snow is not an issue here. So only problem is dead load, live load, earthquake load, and wind load. So out of this earthquake and wind, both are lateral load, but the probability of occurrence of earthquake and wind at the same time is very rare, right? So it is very rare that you are having a 8 or 9 Richter scale earthquake at the same time you are having 50 kilometer per hour of wind. So the probability of occurrence of load is very less, so that is why either we are considering the wind load or either we are considering the earthquake load. The problem with considering more number of load is that you are assuming more load. That means you are going to make the structure, your sections more larger or heftier, eventually end up in with a non-economical, or your structure will be very costlier. So we have to take care of the economy point of view also. So that is why, while the code suggests that if you are considering the wind load, no need to consider the earthquake load. If you are considering the earthquake load, don't no need to consider the wind load. Now, what is combination? Combination means at a certain point of time, what kind of situation might arise. Suppose you are staying in a home, so obviously the dead load will be there, the self weight, the furnitures will be there, and also you as a live load, you are also there. So the first combination arises, that is dead load and live load. So the safety factors that we use for dead load and live load are 1.5 and 1.5. So dead dead load 1.5 plus the live load 1.5. This WL should not be there. You do not consider this WL. Now the next combination is that you might not be at your home, but or when suppose earthquake came, you go outside, so there will be no live load. The only thing is the dead load and the earthquake load. Then in that case, the combination will be 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 earthquake load. Then or 1.5 wind load. Now there is another one is zero point 0.9 dead load plus 1.5 earthquake load. This particular load combination is very important. You can see that dead load is reduced. So you can expect a very good question from this point, like why in the safety factors we have considered a very lesser than 1. This is because to take care of the overturned criteria. That means you can see that one structure can be overturned if its self weight is less. Now when lateral load is there, it will try to overturn the particular structure, but it will counteract the overturning effect will be counteracted by the self weight. So that is why we are trying to see if the self weight is less and and the earthquake is there, then what will be the effect. So one might ask you, how do you say that dead load will change? That means, yeah, I'm not going to change if the furniture or the shelf is not going to change. But this kind of situation might arise during the construction phase. During the construction phase, the dead load is not completely there, but in that case, if the earthquake comes, your structure should not collapse. So this is a very interesting point that you should remember, why in this combination we use zero point 0.9 dead load and 1.5 earthquake load or wind load or say lateral load. So there is another combination, that means when dead load is there, live load is there, also earthquake load or wind load is there. In that case, we have assumed a slightly lesser value of partial safety factor, that is 1.2, 1.2 and 1.2. So all these combinations or factors are considered considering the economy as well as the effect of load over the structure under different circumstances. Then load combination for serviceability. As you can see, we have already discussed in limit state method. We have two criteria. One is limit state of collapse and one is limit state of serviceability. So in serviceability factor is only because only to check for the cracks as well as the reflection. So that is why here you will not see that it has been the load values are increased. So it is, we are only considering the working load, so these are only working load values. Okay, so there are some mistakes over here, you just correct it. It should be 1, it should be 1, and this wind load should not be there, and this should be 1, this should be 1. Okay, this should be 1, this should be zero point 0.8, and this should be also 0.8.